Alright guys, this is the lecture for Module 19. I hope you're having a great day so far, and if you aren't, well, it's about to get a whole lot better. That was brought back by request, so I hope you enjoyed that. In this lecture, we're going to learn about, we're actually going to put aggregate demand and aggregate supply together in order to make a super graph that is very important for AP Macroeconomics. You really can't do AP Macroeconomics without the aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve. So the aggregate demand, aggregate supply model or graph uses the aggregate supply curve and the aggregate demand curve together to analyze economic fluctuations. Right? So that's why it's so important, because it gives us a snapshot of how the economy is doing. In fact, let's go ahead and write that down. Alright, the aggregate demand, aggregate supply curve is a snapshot of the economy. Alright? Very important for you to understand. Okay, so short run macroeconomic equilibrium. Basically, the economy is in short run macroeconomic equilibrium when the quantity of aggregates output supply is equal to the quantity demanded. Alright, so that gives us a short run price level and a short run equilibrium output. Now, the short run macroeconomic equilibrium, I want you to go ahead. You're actually not going to draw this on any of the four graphs on the first page. And yes, that means that there is a back page to this lecture. So you need to make sure that you take a look at that and don't miss that. All right, no excuses. I'm saying right here in the lecture. Actually go ahead and write this on the back page, the graph that's on the left side on the bottom. We should go ahead and draw this right here. Okay, and we're going to add to it, so make sure you leave yourself some space. So this is what it looks like in the short run here. Alright, so we've got our price level on the y-axis, real GDP on the x-axis. We have our short run aggregate supply, or just aggregate supply there. Alright, we've got our aggregate demand curve here. So this point right here, where short run aggregate supply and aggregate demand intersect, that is going to be our short run equilibrium point. From there, we're going to get our price level and our real GDP. Okay. So I want you to take a look at that, understand it, that that's where equilibrium is. Okay. Now, we are going to add in. Alright, I just leave that for this. Our long run aggregate supply curve. And this is going to get more important here in a second, because for the next few graphs, when we go back to the first page, I'm not going to draw the long run aggregate supply curve just so everything looks clear, but you will always draw a long run aggregate supply curve when we're doing problems with the aggregate demand aggregate supply graph. Okay? Alright, so now that we have a long run here, this becomes our long run equilibrium point. Does that make sense? So instead of this being y1, we're going to label this as yp for potential real GDP. Alright, remember we said that's a long run aggregate supply, so that's what we're going to label it as. Okay? Hope that makes sense. I hope I was clear enough. For the next couple of examples, we're not going to have the long run aggregate supply curve just so we can see what happens with aggregate demand and aggregate supply. But every other time, we're always going to put it there because that's what gives us the idea for how the economy is doing. Okay, so go ahead and draw it on that far left side and write above it long run equilibrium. Alright. Now, for the demand shocks portion of this, this is what happens when aggregate demand shifts, and we're going to analyze basically what happens to price level and real GDP. So this is what you're going to do on your first two graphs there on the front page again. So flip back to the first page. Alright, so we're going to have our two graphs. If I can draw these. we go. Remember, we're always going to label these. So we got our price level and our real GDP for both graphs. Now again, for this one, I'm not going to draw the long run aggregate supply curve, just so we can see easier. Alright, one less thing to distract us, but every other time from this point forward, we will draw it. That's that. Okay. This is bad. Try that one more time. There we go. Okay, so when aggregate demand increases, alright, it's going to shift to the right. That's going to cause real GDP to increase. Alright, and price level to also increase. Alright, when aggregate demand decreases, the opposite's true for both. Price level is going to go down, and real GDP is going to go down as well. Alright, you see how that works? Okay, now, things that will cause aggregate demand to go down, look back at your causes for aggregate demand to shift, and it's going to be anything that would be a negative there. Okay, so anything that would have a negative impact on GDP, on consumer spending, investment spending, government spending, and net exports. So if we import more or we don't export as much or anything like that, all those things would have negative impact. If it has a positive impact on any of those things, then that's going to cause aggregate demand to increase and shift to the right. And we will do a lot more practice with this on Wednesday and Friday. Alright. Now, for the supply shocks, we're going to redraw these graphs here. Yes, I know that this may seem like a lot of labeling and tedious stuff, but we have to do it every single time. Alright, so stop your complaining. Now, when aggregate supply increases, shifts to the right, our real GDP is going to increase, but our price level is going to go down. Alright, so again, you're shifting the graph, and then you're analyzing what happens at price level and no GDP. Don't put the cart in front of the horse. All right, you gotta make sure that you shift the curve first, then analyze what happens next. All right, when aggregate supply decreases, there's a leftward shift here. All right, and real GDP is going to go down, and price level is going to go up. This, graphically, is stagflation. We're going to talk about that here in a second. All right? But if you remember stagflation from U.S. history, that was when we had the oil embargo imposed upon us. The OPEC had put an embargo on oil being exported to the United States. Our energy prices increased, which led to a decrease in our aggregate supply because it now became more expensive for companies to make stuff, which caused real GDP to go down, so we entered a recession. but we also had incredibly high prices. So it's kind of a double whammy effect. All right. Now, there's the definition for stagflation, all right, which again you can find on the back page of your notes. That's essentially the combination of inflation and stagnating or falling aggregate output. So two negatives. All right. Now, the economy is in long-run macroeconomic equilibrium, but the point of short-run macroeconomic equilibrium is on the long-run aggregate supply curve. All right. Again, just to remind you, although you should have a strong graph, that's when our aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph looks like this. Man, this is like the nicest graph I've ever drawn. Okay, so that is long-run macroeconomic equilibrium put onto a graph. This is potential real GDP. That's the current price level right there. Right. Anytime all the lines intersect at the same point, you're in long-run macroeconomic equilibrium. Okay. We're actually going to save this for Wednesday, for the next class that we meet, I should say, because who knows when the next day we're going to meet. So the next time we meet, I will go over the self-correcting aggregate demand, aggregate supply graph. All right. Now, long-run macroeconomic equilibrium, there is a recessionary gap when aggregate output is below potential output. There is an inflationary gap when aggregate output is above potential output. Now, the output gap is the percentage difference between actual aggregate output and potential output. Okay. Since the economy is self-correcting when shocks aggregate demand affect output in the short run, but not the long run. Don't worry about that. I guess go ahead and write that in self-correcting. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go back up to this blank page here. All right. This isn't going to be the self-correcting one. Like I said, we're going to go over that in the next time we meet. However, you need to know what a recessionary gap looks like. Alright, and an inflationary gap. Alright, now the reason why this is a recessionary gap with a short-run equilibrium point to the left of potential output is because this shows us, remember this point here is 0. Alright, so if we go out here, this is increasing along the x-axis, so our actual aggregate output and the short-run equilibrium point is less than our potential. So if your economy is not producing as much stuff, people aren't making as much money, bad stuff is happening. Alright, you are below your potential. That's a recessionary gap. Alright, an inflationary gap is the opposite. Alright, now here, notice how our actual real GDP is above our potential. Alright, when that happens, we call that inflationary gap, because that means that prices are going to be higher than they otherwise should be. Alright, so if you have any questions, write them down. I will answer them the next time that we meet. Thank you once again for watching this lecture, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.